Good day, everyone, and welcome to the 1, 2, 3, 4th live in this series that we're doing to commemorate our 30 years. It's just the start of our 30 years in business. A little bit more about that in a second, but I'm so glad that you're here. Wherever you're watching, assuming you're watching live, if you are, please go to the comments of whatever social platform you're on. Say hello. Tell us where you're located. We'd love to know that, and we can talk about that along the way. And because you're here, I want you to imagine that you're joining us like we're around the table having a cup of coffee or a glass of water or whatever beverage you would choose, whatever time of day it might be for you. And because if we were sitting around a table, you would ask a question. If you had it, you'd comment. If you had a comment, you'd share it. If you had an idea, you'd offer it. I want you to do that here as well. So this is a session really ultimately for you. And so if you've got questions or comments, please share them. We want those. And like I said, I want you to tell us where you're located because I want to know, but also to get your fingers used to doing the typing so that if you have comments, you'll share them. So you see above Jones's shoulder, this thing that says celebrating 30 years. And I hinted at that a second ago. So for the last number of years, I've done lots of interviews, live and otherwise. And last time I counted between my podcast and Virtual Leader Con and other things, I've done over 600 of these where I've interviewed or led the conversation, facilitated the conversation with someone else. And while I've been on a lot of other people's podcasts over time, for the most part on our channels, it's been me with the mic leading the conversation. But in this series, I've asked some folks to join me, and I'm going to turn the mic over to them, and we will have a conversation for sure. But Jones, I'm a little scared because he says he's got a bunch of questions for me, so we'll see if I can actually answer them. So we decided to do this series, and we're actually adding some more to it. Originally, we had 9 of these, and we're adding a few more to it that we were going to spread out over time. But when we decided to do this, I thought about who would I want to have. And I wanted to have people join me that I knew and that I trusted and that I valued and that I thought could do a great job of leading the conversation. And so some of those folks are friends I've known for a long time. Some of those are folks who are podcasters. Some of those are folks like Jones. I think we've only ever met one time actually in person. I think it's only once, maybe it's twice. We can get to that in a minute. But let me introduce you to Jones Laughlin. I have a very short introduction for Jones. He is a speaker. He's a trainer. He's an author. He specializes in working with leaders around leadership, time management, and productivity. He's written 4 books, authored or co-authored 4 books, including Always Growing, How to Be a Stronger Leader in Any Season, Juggling Elephants, and Getting to It with Todd Mussing. And those books are both around productivity. And I think it's his latest book, Getting the Blue Ribbon. He and I share something else in common, along with doing some similar kinds of work. And that is that we both have farm backgrounds. He went to North Carolina State. I went to Purdue. Both have degrees in agriculture. He was an ag educator. And now he's going to have the mic. Jones Laughlin, thanks for joining us. And the floor is yours to take the lead, sir.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Wow, what an honor. And yes, we do have lots of things in common. And we actually have met twice. We met in Boston and we met in the Indianapolis airport.
That's right. I forgot about the airport.
Yeah, I saw this gentleman coming out of the bathroom. Can we say that? And I said, I know him. And I said, Kevin, I'm Jones Laughlin, because I always introduce myself. And so it was neat. And so I'm honored, Kevin. I have admired your work. I'm a reader of your work. I don't know how many times I have recommended this book in the past one of these 2 books in the past couple of years. And I love your approach. It's real, it's authentic. And that comes from that ag background, of making sure that the solutions you give are applicable and people can use them. So I'm excited about today with this topic of how today's teams can achieve remarkable results. Now, of course, I want to warm you up a little bit since I'm asking the questions today. So I have some questions you're going to need to answer for me to kind of, just kind of get in that intellectual frame of mind. So here's my first question. My first question is, when was the last time you had a XXX root beer?
That's from triple X, or what people lovingly call tri-chi.
Oh, yes.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
it's really triple X, but some people call it tri-chi. It's been a while. It's probably been, I got some in a bottle for Christmas 2 years ago.
Okay.
Haven't had one since, a couple years.
Oh, and if those of you who don't know, yes, if you ever go to Purdue, you must go by that institution. Started in 1929, I think. Wonderful root beer, great atmosphere. It's just that college eatery that everybody needs to go to when they go to Purdue. So good.
On the hill, but on the level.
What's that?
On the hill, but on the level.
I have not heard that.
Right. I think it's theirs. It's someone that I think it's triple X.
Okay. All right, excellent. All right, second question. Briefly tell us about one of your favorite antique tractors.
Well, I don't know if it's my favorite, but I'll stay in the Purdue vein. So for those of you that don't know, Purdue's colors are black and gold, and our biggest rival is a school called Indiana University, whose colors are cream and crimson, or red. And one of the most famous and historical tractor brands in the United States was Farmall. Later was International Harvester, and their tractors are red. And most of the tractors that I have are green or John Deere. So I made this comment once that I thought someone should take a Farmall H, which is a famous model, and paint it Purdue black and gold. And about a couple of months later, I was at a meeting and someone said, I heard you were going to make a Purdue tractor. So a few months after that, my dad calls me on the phone and says, you need to send me a check. I said, why am I sending you a check? He says, because you just bought half of a tractor. Well, I just bought a tractor and you just bought half of it. And it was a Farmall. It was a smaller one, 1939. It's the oldest tractor I own. And it was red. It's not now. It's the Boilermaker Ag Special, and it's painted in Purdue black and Purdue gold. And yeah, so that's we'll go with that story.
Oh, beautiful. And lest we doubt, did everyone notice how fast Kevin got to talking when he was talking about that tractor? I mean, obviously, no question, one of his passions. Well, I understand.
Will see it tomorrow. I'm going to the farm tonight. I'll be there the next couple of days, and
beautiful.
Probably won't.
Beautiful.
It's not in the front of the shop. I'll be on a tractor tomorrow. It won't be one of those. It won't be.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Last question. And this is kind of funneling us into where we're going today, Kevin. I really appreciate your daily Remarkable Day newsletters, emails that you send out. And here's what you wrote today. And I just think it's so powerful. And if you're not already signed up for Kevin's Remarkable Day, you need to do that. It says, reflection. Looking back with the intention of learning is one of the most powerful ways we can learn. How often are you looking back? How often do you mine the richness of your experience to find lessons, ideas, and inspiration? All those things are there like minerals in the ground, but like those minerals, our experiences can't be used unless they are mined and processed. Our experiences can't be used unless they are mined and processed. Oh, I love that. And Kevin, that's the focus I want us to have today, is reflecting on your insights and your background and all the things you've done so that we can better understand how our teams can achieve remarkable results. So let's jump in. Okay.
That's where, by the way, people can go if you want to sign up for that.
Yes.
For our other newsletters, kevinikenberry.com/newsletters. Thank
Absolutely.
you for that.
Kind
thought. I actually wrote it yesterday, and when it showed up in my inbox this morning, I thought it was apropos for today. I didn't really think about it at the time, but it certainly does apply. So
yeah, it does. It does.
Lead us on, sir.
Yes. So we came up with the topic of how today's teams can achieve remarkable results. Now, there's a buzzword there. Today's teams. Now, we know that teams are working more, remotely. Not everybody's in an office, and maybe the generational things have changed. We get that, or most people do. Tell us about some of the other ways you see teams different now than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. What's so different about teams today?
Well, that's an interesting question. And my first answer is they're not. In that, people have been working together in different contexts for thousands of years. And human beings are still human beings. So in the long distance leader book that you held up a few minutes ago, we said, here's rule number 1, think leadership first, location second, which was another way of saying that there's way more about leadership that's the same than is different. What's different matters. Okay. Right. So I'll start there with that same idea that there's way more about teams that are the same than it's different. And so I think, Jones, what a lot of times people do is say, well, everything's different now, so we got to like really think about what this is. And I would say, okay, don't forget the timeless principles. Don't forget the things that aren't changing first. So there's a whole lot of stuff that I don't want everyone to just throw everything out and start over. There are some things that are different. And one of them is, and I'm not a big, well, there's this generation and this generation and this generation, and they're different because they had the internet and all that. And like, there's some truth there, but I think there's a lot of danger in how we stereotype people because of their age. And that's a mistake, in my opinion. However, having said that, we are living in the first time in human history where people from 5 different age groups or generations are literally working together. Right. The age range on my team is 30 to 73. And no, I am not the 73-year-old. Right. So we don't have anybody currently in that maybe that youngest generation. But that's the workplace. And that's definitely different. Right. And that provides us with opportunities and challenges for sure. And I think more opportunities than challenges, actually. So I think that's a difference. I think another difference is that as we move into what I guess smart people would call the post-industrial age, many of us grew up with a mindset of what work looked like and what teams looked like that was based on really sort of an early 1900s model, right? And as the context of work changes, what we need from our folks and from each other is changing a little. And so, because, if everyone's working on a farm, since we started there, the nature of the work is a little different than the nature of the work of our team, where people are doing knowledge work. And so it's still work. We still need to collaborate. We still need to build relationships. We still need to know how to get along. There's a bunch of stuff we can talk about there. But context is different. Context matters. And so those are a couple of things that I think are different. There are just some things that we didn't think about or talk about 30 years ago. That we can talk about now.
Yeah. So much to unpack there. One of the things that I keyed in on, just because I'm a relational kind of person, you said what we need from each other is different. Talk about that a little bit. What we need from each other is different.
I remember once standing in the middle of the field on a hot summer day doing a very sort of arduous task with my father and another guy. And I was probably in college, actually. And Dad's comment was, the reason you're in college is so you can work with your head and not your hands. Because we were doing this sort of hard physical task. Now, there are days that I miss not working with my hands, right? And yet that statement is a part of what's different, right? That more and more we are working with our heads, and which means is we have seemed to move more into, well, I'm just going to get my work done. We moved to the logical, we moved to the rational, we moved to all those things. And yet we are human, which is more than the rational and the logical, which means that one of the things we need from each other is we need to be connected. Like we had a epidemic of loneliness in the United States before we had a pandemic. And the pandemic didn't make it better. And so one of the things we need in our work is to have relationships with people such that they feed us as well as facilitate us getting the work done. And that's more, that's always been true. Back to my earlier point, it's never been more true than now. And as leaders, I think we have to remember that. We have to make space for that. We have to honor that. We have to make that a priority.
All right, Kevin, put you on and put you on the spot here. I hear some leaders going, "Yeah, but that sounds like that squishy, touchy feely,
Yep, it is.
kind of stuff." So give me some examples, or what does that look like for leaders to do that?
Well, um, we could give you 100 things, but let's just start with a couple of easy ones.
Yeah.
Number one is how strong are the working relationships you have with your team members? If they're not as strong as they could be, that probably means that the relationships your team members have with each other might not be as strong either. So you have to prioritize that, right? And which means that we need to make sure we're not just transacting business with people, which I say,
Gotcha.
talking about the work and the weather. Like if all we're talking about is work and weather, we're not doing anything other than transacting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we're having true interactions with people, we have the chance for relationships to grow. Relationships grow on two levels of relatedness or connectedness and the vector of interaction. So if we need to make sure that we're prioritizing having interactions with our team members. So that's one thing that we can do, because that not only will build that relationship with our folks, between our folks and us, but it models it for others. And another thing that we can do is we can put everything else down and listen. So whether that person is across the screen or across the table or across the desk, we need to stop this foolishness called multitasking, which isn't even really real, and listen to people. So Jones, like I can tell you a surefire way to make my wife mad at me. Now, I don't like to make my wife mad at me, but I can give you a surefire way to do that. And here it is. It could be the television or a book, right? Doesn't matter. But here's a way. If she's in the kitchen or she's at the table and I'm in the living room and she's talking and I'm reading and I say I'm listening, she'll say, "No, you're not." Because I'm not. Now, here's how I make her mad, though, is then I say, "Yes, I was." And then I repeat back what she said. But you see, listening is not a tape recorder.
Right.
Because we know that listening is about our full attention. It's not looking at the book. It's not something else. It's like right here, full on, getting all of the visual, vocal, and verbal cues and using that to better understand the message that's being relayed to us. And when we do that with others, it builds relationships and it builds trust.
Oh, well said.
And we have the chance to do that every single day.
Yeah, great point is that we think it's got to be these formal 15, 20-minute conversations, but it doesn't. It's just that incidental interaction that makes it happen. And I like what we've got.
The comment there. It's creating, preparing the environment. So I'll give you an example about my environment. So like in a pre-pandemic world, so our office, we call Remarkable House, is a house. It's like a 65-year-old house now. And my office is half of the upstairs. And across the way here, I've got bookcases galore, the entire walls, except for the window with bookcases. And I got 2 comfortable chairs. And over here, I have a desk. And there used to be a chair sitting across from me. So someone could come into my office and sit down in that chair. But I was distracted, even if I didn't want to be, because I had a laptop in front of me. Now, it would be very hard for that right now, because now there's a camera, 5 lights, a microphone. Like there's not even a chair there now. But if someone were to come in before preparing the environment, if we were really going to have a listening conversation, a real conversation of any length, we went and sat in the 2 chairs across the way where I was less likely to be distracted.
Yeah.
And I
love that.
It does not mean I was a perfect listener, because I wasn't, but it improved the odds. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. To improve the odds that it would happen in that way. So I love that, as far as those relationships.
Oh, Miss Becky. I knew Becky from college. And so here's the thing. She's right. Like, and just sending a text, just sending a Teams message, or in our case, a Slack message, while very useful and very helpful, those are useful communication tools. But the most underappreciated communication tool we have now is this thing, not to type on it, but to talk on it. I agree with Becky 100%. And here's the thing about that. We have We have all these communication tools, and all of them have value. So you'll appreciate this, Jones, because I've used this example 100 times. When I go to the farm, when I walk into the shop tomorrow morning, I promise you I could put my hands on probably at least 10 different hammers. I got ball peen hammers and claw hammers, and I've got picking hammers, and I got hammers. I got 3 sledgehammers, for heaven's sakes, of different sizes. And I even have a favorite hammer. Just like most of us have a favorite communication tool. But that doesn't mean we should just use our favorite because it's the one that is our favorite. We need to use the right tool. So my favorite tool, hammer, is one of those sledgehammers, because I remember spending a lot of time swinging it, alternating with my father. It wasn't a favorite then, but now it's my favorite. But if I need to put a nail in the wall, that's not the best tool.
Exactly.
And to Becky's point, email, text message, social media, whatever, useful tools, valuable tools, want them in my tool belt, want to use them effectively. Not always the best tool. And sometimes it's the phone or turning on the webcam.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's turn it for a moment, because you and your team do such a good job of not only preparing leaders, but those who are part of a team. Okay, help us with, what does that look like on the teammate side? How can the teammates help the leader, facilitate that relational type of environment that you're talking about that's so important?
Well, one thing they can do is we can have them help us be accountable. Like if we're saying that that's important, then are we living that, right? So I would like to hope that my team will hold me accountable if I'm not doing those kinds of things as well as we could. So there's one thing. But I think the other thing is that if the leader has said to you as a team member that it's okay to work on building relationships, that it's okay to build some level of connectedness and relatedness, and that time spent doing that within reason is part of the work, then you got to believe them, and then you got to go do it, right? Because here's the thing: it's not just leaders that get so down into the work that they forget to interact with others and get so focused on their task list that they don't think about the team, but it's the team members too. So one of the things that any of us can do, doesn't matter which hat we're wearing, is to make sure that we're reaching out, connecting, intentionally doing the things that can help us build the relationship. Because here's the thing: better teams aren't just about people liking each other. And if we like each other, it helps. Like, I don't want this whole conversation, Jones, to be about, oh, Kevin says we should all go do ropes courses and we should all go do these things and get to know each other. Like, we should building strong working relationships is critical to our team's success. It's not the whole picture, but it's an important piece. And it's a piece, since we've been going down this path, that has been hurt or has been damaged by this fact that we're not always in physical proximity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well said. Thank you for that. So you speaking of tools, relationships, strong relationships is one tool. You just alluded to the fact that's not everything. Okay, what else should be front of mind for leaders of today's teams to help their team be, successful? Yeah, I got to have strong relationships with my people. Give me something else.
People need a highly effective team will be highly committed to the outcomes of the team. Okay. So they have to be committed to the work, to the outcome of the work, and to each other. So the higher the level of commitment, you might use the word engagement, the more engaged people are with each other and the work, the more effective the team will be. So one of the things that we need to be doing as leaders is to make sure we're leading for commitment and not simply for people to comply. And that should be part of our measure of how successful our team is. Are people committed to the work, committed to each other? And that's important. And then related to that, different but strongly related, is do people see a line of sight between their work and the goal? Like if you're on a team in a larger organization, you might even know what the team's goal is, and you might be all in and be committed to that team's goal. But if the team is headed this direction, which is different from where the organization needs us, if that alignment is off, it doesn't matter how good this team is. The team is not reaching the goals of the organization. So highly effective teams and team members, teammates, are clear on the goal of the team, but see alignment of that to the ultimate organizational goal. So hopefully in a highly effective team, everyone can say, here's the team's goal and here's how that relates to the organizational goal. Mm-hmm. That alignment is critical.
Okay. All right. So here we go. We got people listening who are just wanting to jump into the screen right now, or they're listening to this later and they're going, that's my team. We are really good at the wrong things. We're working really busy.
Wrong. It's not like 90 degrees off.
Right. It's not 90 degrees wrong, but we're not. Yeah. Thank you. We're not alignment. Yeah. So how do you get back on track? I mean, we're all busy and there's been a lot of stuff invested in us getting to that outcome that's just a little bit, off. How do you begin to get back on track, so to speak?
We need to stop using that 4-letter word called busy, first of all. The problem, and my grandmother would not have agreed with this when I say it's the most dangerous 4-letter word in English language. She would not have agreed.
Right.
There were 4-letter words she wouldn't say that she would have put higher on that list. But let me say that's part of the problem. That busy is about activity, but we're really it's about accomplishment, because we can look at a team and say, man, they get a lot of stuff done. But Jones, to your point, if it's not the right stuff, who cares? Right. And if we're for 85%, if we're off by 5 degrees, right, then we're not quite there. So as leaders, we have to step back. We have to help people step back, look higher, see the picture. We can't get alignment if we can't see what that end goal is. So we have to pull people out of busy because until we do that, we live in this place of activity, which might not. Yeah, we're busy. Yeah, we're working hard, but are we working on the right stuff? Right? Becky says something about placeholders. Adding too many placeholders instead of truly active hands-on members can be distracted, right? So here's the thing. So if we got too many things, I think this is what you're saying, Becky. If we got too many things that we're trying to have people work on, you got none. Like if you got 7 goals, you got no goals, right? So like, what are we really trying to accomplish? Where are we really trying to go? You got smart people. Help them see the big picture that we see as the leader, and then equip them to go work on those things, and you'll have better success.
Yeah. All right. So not to use the 4-letter word that we don't use. So a leader says, yeah, that sounds good. When do I do that? I mean, what's the cadence or rhythm that you've noticed over the years that successful leaders do to make sure they're carving out that space, as you said, to get up, take the meta view, the 40,000 foot level, say, okay, is my team working on the things that are going to most deliver on organizational goals? What do you see successful leaders do that works?
Well, they have to stop. And they have to say, I'm going to take that view. So for me, that's time spent. It's one of the things I do early in the morning. Now that's not everybody's rhythm. My power hours are in the morning. So I make sure that I'm using my power hours for the most important things. And one of those things is to ask those questions. So there's all sorts of things that you can do. Like you can put them on a regular routine. You can block time on your calendar to ask yourselves those questions. You can do what I'm going to do tonight, which is have a 5-hour drive north, where for the most part, I will not have the radio on. I will not be on the phone. I will be thinking. Now, it's not always awesome, because when I'm thinking, I really like to be writing, and I really shouldn't be doing that when I'm driving. And yet that quiet time is important. Even if I'm not taking notes, I could show you an index card of some notes I took when I was driving in the dark. I can't even really read them. They're kind of there. They're kind of important. I'm still trying to figure them out. But I'm not suggesting that, really. What I'm really suggesting is time spent think. So we as leaders need to remind ourselves, I call it the bird's eye view, that our team members have the worm's eye view, and we need to have the bird's eye view. And so we have to consciously, intentionally make the time to lift our gaze. And then, and only then, can we lift the gaze of the team. And so until we do that first, we can't help our teams do it if we're not doing it for ourselves. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is have some rhythm for doing that. So every team and the work of teams are different, right? So our team, which is spread across the United States, we have a monthly team meeting, right? Everyone has one-on-ones with their leader, and all other sorts of things are happening. Projects are this and that, but we have one monthly team meeting. We go over results. We talk about what's coming in the next month. And one of the things we do is we bring ourselves back to the big picture. Here's why we're here. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's what our customers are telling us about whether we're doing that or whether we're not doing that or how well we're doing that. So we open with our mission, vision, and values, and we close with some statements that we've created about what we are and what we're going to strive to be, which is that we're going to choose to be empathetic. We're going to choose to work to be seen as thought leaders. This is a partial list. We're going to choose to be non-political. We choose to do our best to become a model hybrid team. So those things are things we remind ourselves of at the end of, that's just a partial list of things that we remind ourselves of at the end of the meeting. We start with, here's why we're here and why that matters. Here's what our customers are telling us about how well we're doing in that regard. And then we can talk about, revenue, other sorts of measures and that sort of stuff. And other stuff, right?
Sure.
But one of the things is to make sure you're continuing to do that, both individually and sort of corporately.
Yeah. Yeah. What about for the leader who says, Kevin, I'm afraid of what they're going to tell me?
Well, that means it's been too long since you've had the conversation, first of all. That's human, right? Like, and it isn't necessarily that I don't want to hear bad news. Could be that. Could be an ego thing. But it could also just be like, I'm embarrassed. Like, they're going to tell me stuff that I know is right.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to like self-flagellate. And I think what we have to do is, well, let's think about it this way. Jones, when we were kids, like once a year, this movie was on TV, and like everybody watched The Wizard of Oz when it was on TV, right? Like once a year.
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz, right? Like, so The Wizard of Oz comes on, and when I was a kid, I never made it to the end of the movie because I was scared to heck of the flying monkeys. Like
the monkeys, absolutely.
But when you get to the end of the movie, and I'm going to presume that many of you that are watching or listening have gotten to the end of the movie. Near the end of the movie, Dorothy and her troop are in this big space. They're in Oz, right?
Yeah.
And they hear this booming voice, and there's this flashing green lights on the wall about the great and powerful Oz.
Yeah.
And they're all shaking in their shoes, except for the dog, Toto, who goes over to the green curtain, pulls it down, and there's this little dude with a megaphone, and he's saying, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Here's the thing. We are scared of stuff when we're scared of the unknown.
Wow.
So as a leader, what we've got to do is ask the questions. And maybe sometimes they'll be hard to hear.
Yeah.
But sometimes we've perhaps made it worse than it is. Or the team is willing to say, hey, there's some things we need to work on, or here's some things you can work on, or here's where our problems are. But that doesn't mean that we can't overcome them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And until we know what they are, we can't address them. So, I mean, I have been there, like afraid of the unknown, afraid to ask the question, afraid to open that can, like whatever metaphor you want to use, afraid to pull down the curtain. And I can't at this moment think of a time when I finally did it, I was glad I waited. Like I was almost, I can't think of a time when I wouldn't think I should have done it sooner.
Wow.
Right. So there's thought about that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So let's switch for a moment now. Again, we're reflecting today. We're thinking about it. You have so many stories and examples in your history, your 30 years of work with helping teams become remarkable. Give me a couple ones that maybe stand out in your mind, that maybe you went in to work with a team and you thought, whoo, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, which you never know. I mean, we're human. Are ones that maybe just stand out in your mind that the people dug in, did the hard work, figured it out? What are some, and of course you can make them generic so we won't know who it is, but what are some that come to mind for you?
The first thing that comes to my mind is when I left Chevron, which is where I was before I started the company. So 30 years ago, when I left Chevron, I was working with a subsidiary of the company the Chevron owned, like, if I remember right, a third of this company in Edmonton, Alberta. And this company had been founded around this particular technology. And the determination was, we're going to build this company around the idea of self-directed work teams. Okay. And I was asked to help with some of that development. And then after I left Chevron, they wanted to continue to hire me. And so I was honored and had the chance to work with this organization for several years, a team, and help them really think about what does it mean to be a self-directed team, and how do we really work together, and all this, a whole bunch of stuff there. But the thing that came to my mind when you were asking the question was this, is that a lot of people think that the holy grail of decision-making is consensus building. And if you have a self-directed team, you would think, well, if there's not really a leader, then we need to have some consensus. And if we don't have consensus, it's going to be really hard because we might splinter or this and that. One of the things I learned from them, because that organization collectively, which wasn't huge, 125 people, as I recall at the time, multiple teams, obviously, including people doing, running a physical plant, like, high pressure, high volumes, like dangerous stuff, like running a plant, chemical plant, with self-directed teams, where they had the right and the ability and the ownership to shut it down if they thought there was a problem. They didn't have to call the general manager or anybody else. Like, they didn't. That's the kind of level of management that these teams had, as an example. And one of the things that they became collectively better at building consensus than any group I've ever worked with.
Wow.
And here's what I learned. Is that they didn't use it very often, because they had built a level of trust in each other to say, well, listen, we've all talked about it, and we all have the same data. So I trust Jones. So if that's the decision Jones is making in this case, then we can go. We don't have to have consensus on everything, because the level of trust that we have can help us overcome the need for us to be in 100% absolute agreement. And so that's a lesson that I've sort of never forgotten. And so, Daniel, welcome to you from Brazil. We're glad that you're here. That's something that's different than 30 years ago. We couldn't have been doing this, Jones.
There you go.
We couldn't have been hardly doing this. We determined that the first time we tried to do a live stream, I wish Marissa was down the hall, which she is only a couple times a week. We did a live stream in like 2013, like 10 years ago. And it was a big freaking production, and it didn't go so well. And now I'm like doing it on I'm using a real camera, not a webcam, but you could be doing this on a webcam.
Sure,
and people are watching us in Brazil, for heaven's sakes. This is the world is an amazing place, and the technology allows us to do all sorts of things. And so, if the three of us were on the same team, and Daniel's in Brazil and I'm in Indiana and Jones is in North Carolina, we can still collaborate. We can still have a highly effective team. We can do great work, and we might never even meet, not even in an airport, Jones.
Yeah. So let's continue on that vein, because I got goosebumps, Kevin, when you talked about self-directed teams having that much trust in each other that they could, they didn't have to use consensus very often, because I don't see a lot of teams like that. I mean, that's rare.
Well, I don't think there are. I think that's it.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah. So help us with, how do we begin closing that gap a little bit so that there is a higher level of trust among teammates and the leader of the team? I mean, where does that even start?
Well, that's a big topic.
I know. And we've got 4 hours, but go ahead.
So first of all, what we said earlier is part of the answer, right?
Yeah.
Relationships strengthen, the opportunity for trust comes along with it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned earlier, listening. Like, if you wanted a single thing that you could do to improve trust on your team or with another person, is to listen more
Yeah.
carefully, right? Worry less about what your point of view is and listen to understand their point of view more.
Mm-hmm.
That would certainly be one of the things. I think maybe one of the 5 or 10 most profound things I've learned in my professional life is this, and that is that trust is a noun and a verb. Like, look it up, right? Trust exists. That's a noun.
Mm-hmm.
And I trust Jones. That's a verb. It's
Mm.
something, it's an action. So here's something that I believe is profoundly true. And that is, the more of the verb we do, the more of the noun we get. And so what often happens is, say, well, I'll trust them when. In other words, I'm waiting for them to prove
Yeah.
rather than extending and starting. And I really truly believe that the more of the verb we do, the more of the noun we get. And that's a magical idea.
Yeah.
It's a magical idea.
Oh, but it's so practical, right? The more of the verb I do, the more of the noun I'll get. The
I'll
more I.
prove it to you. Let me prove it to everybody.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
think about someone that you know in your heart trusts you. And
Okay.
everyone who's watching or listening can come up with a name.
Mm-hmm.
At work, at home, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know? Because of what they do. Not because they say, I trust you. Now, they may say that, but if someone just says, I trust you, you're like, okay, but it's the actions that show it, right?
Mm.
So, and now here's the best part. If you know that person trusts you, you do everything you can to maintain that trust, don't you? Like, don't
Wow.
you go just a little bit over? Like, you make really
Yeah.
sure you deliver. Like, you do everything you can to maintain and hold on to that trust because it's so valuable. And so the more of the verb we do, the more of the noun we get, and it's an upward spiral. And the
Oh,
more of it we
absolutely.
have, even when as humans we mess it up, it doesn't mean we go back to zero.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it is. I was trying to think, and spiral is the word because the more the verb we do, the more noun we get. So more the verb we do, so more the noun we get. So I mean, that's brilliant. Yeah. So we as leaders or as teammates have to start with trusting the verb, those, and then that in return that,
Now, that
the
doesn't
noun
mean we
shows
have to
up.
trust people, everyone that we know with our life,
Right.
right? We
Right.
don't have to go all the way there, but we have
Sure.
to start with at least a benign intent, and some assuming benign intent with the other person or a positive intent, and go there and build it a little at a time. And I always tell leaders, there's a reason why we're leaders. We need to go first, but it can be
Mm.
any of us. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be, well, that's a good idea, Kevin. I'm going to wait for my leader to listen to this so they go do that. No, that applies to all of us as human beings.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. So I know we're kind of running down a little bit. I got one more topic that I'd like to kind of get your insights on because you certainly are the person to answer this. I was in I was in an event the other day and I was sitting with someone who's fairly new in their leadership position. They're a manager, and and they said, Jones, a lot of the people I'm leading are older than I am. I thought that's interesting because I went back and looked, at some of the statistics, and it's amazing how it really has flipped, because of generations in the workplace, which we talked about earlier, that it's not uncommon for somebody younger to be leading those who are older. What advice have you got, Kevin, for leaders like that who want to have their team become successful when they're leading people who are older than them?
Number one, acknowledge it. Like, don't make it
Mm.
be the elephant in the room. Talk about it. Right. And I'll take it another step further. We've worked with clients and people on teams in
Hmm.
smaller companies or in smaller communities where it's not just someone that's older than me, but they knew me when I was a kid. Like, they're friends with my parents. Like, there's that. I mean, that's all real too. So the point,
Yeah.
so there's two things. Number one is acknowledge it and talk about it. And second,
Mm.
don't overanalyze it. Like, you may be making a bigger deal of it than it is. The other person might
Mm.
not be thinking about it nearly as much as you are. So the first thing is acknowledge it and say, hey, I know that I've been entrusted with the role of leader, but I also know that you got a lot more life experience than me. How can we work together? I want us to be able to work together, valuing both of those things. And now we've acknowledged that, right?
Yeah.
As the leader, I am not the fount of all knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Which is another mistake leaders make. They act like they're supposed to have that. Different topic. But the other one is, don't make more of that than it might be. Now, you might be younger and have someone that reports to you that's older, and it is an issue for the other person. Like that's can be true.
Sure.
But don't make it so without talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that. I mean, and actually, I would say, kind of to be or whatever is be curious. Don't just, don't overanalyze and say, oh, it's because they're older. Be curious. What caused that person to take that action? Because it might be it might be just a skill. It might be just a miscommunication. Don't assume that, oh, well, it must be because they're older and they don't like me. But do what good leaders do, and that's pull up and go, wonder what might be causing that behavior. And not
100%. And you know what? The other thing is, not everyone wants the same career path. Not everyone wants to be the leader. And so sometimes that younger person thinks, well, I got the job and they wanted it. Maybe, maybe not. Right.
Yeah.
Again, open the door for a conversation. Don't let it become the elephant in the room, even if you can juggle them. Don't make it be the elephant in the room. And be curious, be open. Be willing to be vulnerable about it, but don't make more of it than it might be.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. Okay. Well, Kevin, we're at 46 minutes past the hour. I want to make sure we have time for some questions, and reminder to all of you, if you've got a question for Kevin about anything that we've talked about today or anything in his 30-year history, which is a lot, that you want to quiz him about, then please drop a question in the comments and we'd love to hear it. Kevin, I want to hear, with all the things that you have seen and experienced in training and speaking and writing and coaching over the past 30 years, what's something you've changed your mind about when it comes to teams achieving remarkable results? What's something you've changed your mind about?
I think that early on, I thought it was mostly about what we talked about at the start, the relationship piece and all that. That a highly effective team, people got to like each other. Not necessarily. I mean, better if we have it than if we don't, but not necessarily. I think the things we've talked about, which are of the level of commitment and the level of alignment, matter far more than I might have thought. And there's one other thing, that there are skills required to be a good teammate, right? So it's not just, do I like you and do I know what we're doing and are we all committed to it? It's also, do we have the skills? Do we know how to collaborate in a meeting? Do we know how to have a dialogue? Do we know how to value the contributions of everybody? Do we know how to step back and not always be in front? Or do we know how to step forward and not just be passive? Like, those are skills. And I think that early on in my career, I underestimated those other three factors and leaned too much into, it's just about the relationships.
Wow. How to be a good teammate. Of course,
there's skills there, right?
Yeah, that's it. There's skills there. I was talking with an HR person the other day, and they were talking about needing to teach some of their people just how to conduct themselves in meetings and how to ask questions, all those basics that we kind of take for granted that people have, but especially those who are newer in the workplace, they've never experienced that.
Well, let's take this example. You got a lot. My daughter started work. She works for Target corporate in Minneapolis, but she doesn't live in Minneapolis. She did for a while, but she doesn't go to the office, doesn't have to go to the office. And we can't just assume if you're our age, you and I's age ish, that, well, just go back to the way it used to be. Like we got a whole bunch of people now that have never worked in an office. And we have all this stuff about what that means and what that looks like and what to do and skills and experiences and expectations that we've got a group of people that never had those.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of a very real sort of obvious example, but it's, but this, like, listen, I've been in this business for a long time, and I've been helping people have better meetings as long as I've been doing this, or I've been trying to help people have better meetings as long as I've been doing this. And meetings still, a lot of them suck, and they suck because, sorry, my grandmother wouldn't like that word either.
True.
But the reason is because too many people don't really know how to have an effective meeting, how to run an effective meeting, and how to participate in a meeting to make it more effective. Those are skills.
Yeah.
Those are absolutely skills.
Yeah.
No. So we can learn them. They can be learned. There's light at the end of that tunnel.
Exactly. Well, Kevin, as I finish up my part before you close us out today, I again, you know how I feel about you. I just love the fact that, your passion, your mission, to grow people. I love that. And you do that in every way. You model it. You mentioned your wife of many years, your kids. I mean, you certainly model that behavior. And on behalf of all of those who've been privy to watch you for these past 30 years, thank you. It has been a joy, and we continue to look for your guidance and wisdom to be shared with us. So be careful on those tractors tomorrow, young man. So,
so first of all, Jones, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. Thank you for all of you that participated today, and your comments. And if you're watching this later and you had a question that you couldn't ask because we weren't live, you can send me that question. Go to LinkedIn and connect with me there and send me a question, or send a message to info@kevinikenberry.com, and I'll be happy to get you an answer or insight, however. So Jones, thank you so much for joining me. This journey of doing these, I had a vision of how they would go. Of course, I didn't know exactly how any of them would go, and they're not all going the same. And yet all of them are exactly what I was hoping for, which is a chance to have a real conversation with a wise person who hopefully asks some questions to challenge me a little bit as well. And so thank you. And thank everybody for joining us. There's going to be more of these. Now, next week, there won't be any of these lives next week, because next week, I'm mostly on vacation. Leading up to this, Jones, a week from Saturday, I will be the officiant for my niece's wedding. It will be the second niece that I've been the officiant for, one on each side of our family, and both of them's names are Allison. So I am now officially an officiant for people whose names are Allison for their wedding. So next week there will be none of these, but we got several of them the following week, and some sprinkled into the late October and early November. And so, Jones, thanks for being here. Such a pleasure. Thanks to all of you for being here as well. With that, everybody, we'll let you go, and we hope that you'll come back. If you're connected with me on whatever social platform you're on, you will see when the next ones show up. I can't give you links to any of them because they haven't been. We have calendar dates, but we don't have the links done. It's sort of a technological thing. But be watching wherever you found this to find others. Hope that you'll do that. And if you're here because of Jones, you're smart. And I hope that you'll choose to follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and vice versa. If you didn't know Jones before you got here, I'd encourage you to connect with him on LinkedIn. The stuff that he shares is excellent, and you will get great value from doing that. So with that, everybody, we're done. And I wish you all to have a wonderful day. And I hope that you will all remember what I have on my arm here, which says, I am remarkable, which means you are remarkable. Thanks, everybody.